What was
Oh,
her
wait,
name?
there we go.
Yeah, what was her name again?
Which one?
Indra? No, what was her name? Inez? The thing on the doorstep.
Oh, Asenath.
Asenath. That's not a normal name.
Yeah, no, it's from the Bible. Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah. Well, anyway, hello everyone. Even though there's nobody watching yet, but
Okay,
hopefully
you're
that will
recording.
change soon. It's early yet. So yes, after some
It's the Stella and Jim Show.
yay! After some trial and mostly error, we have decided to try doing this as a YouTube live stream instead. So here's hoping it works.
Yay! Yep.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh, actually, I am actually going to try because I know. Actually, you try saying something first.
Okay. What do you want to know?
Okay, that is exactly what I wanted to know. So there is a little thing down here that shows the volume level, and it's only making any. Oh wait, say something again. Hang on.
Okay. Hello. Testing.
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah, no, you're good. All right. I was like, but it's not showing anything when you're talking. Is it showing when you're talking? And then I realized, oh yeah, wait, no, it is. That's a different bar that I'm looking at. Okay, we're very new to this, folks.
Yes, we're very new. Yes.
All right, but anyhow, the thing on the doorstep, right? So this is a quite a story. So it has been called by some a poor man's case of Charles Dexter Ward, which
that makes sense.
Yeah, I personally don't agree with it. I think that they're fairly distinct. But then again, that's just me. If you don't agree with me, that's cool too. But also, like, I'm totally right. So, I joke, but and I can see where they're coming from with that. Both stories have sort of having the element of a one person trying to take over the life of another person. In the case of Charles Dexter Ward, it's Joseph Kerwin wanting to take over Charles's life, not necessarily his body, because they look exactly the same. But I mean, it's a little debatable, like maybe kind of his body too, but like it's not really his body because they just look so similar that one can go away and then the other can come in and nobody really notices. So
yeah, it's not really like soul transference or anything.
Yeah, and the thing on the doorstep is me and a couple of my friends affectionately refer to it as the body hopping jackass and this blonde bombshell of a trophy husband.
Nice, that's awesome.
Because I mean that's really what this is.
How so? Tell us. How so?
Yeah. So Asenath Waite is this is. I really love this story, and I'm going to get into why I love this story so much as we get a little further into the episode, into the story, and I will hopefully not go on too long about it because I ramble and I apologize in advance for that, but. And I go off on tangents, and like in the middle of a sentence, I'll be like, "Oh, and this other thing," but hey, you know, it's live.
Yeah, right. It's all right.
Yeah.
Let me ask you something before we even start. Do you ever think Asenath was really Asenath? Was she ever her?
So it's not during the story. There would have been a period of time when Asenath was Asenath and Ephraim was Ephraim.
Sure, when he was growing up, but not during the story. I don't think at any time during the story.
Yeah, no. By then, I mean, because Ephraim took over her body when she was going to go to an all-girls school, and the other students said that she was she talked differently and like not like the other girls, and she would leer at them. And there was she said that she was a magician who happened to do the same things that Ephraim did. And,
Yeah, but the thing is also, she wasn't ever human. I mean, she's a deep one, for God's sake.
Yeah, she's a deep one hybrid. So I mean,
So,
like, there's
a double whammy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, and you really have to feel sorry for Ed in this whole situation, because he really didn't know the full extent of what he was getting himself into.
Yeah.
He kind of knew, but he was in way over his depth, and he just got thrown in the deep end.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting, because if you take away some of the more magical aspects of the story, this is just the story of a really bad marriage. These are two people that they should not have been together. They really because
he
after
was
they get married
by her looks.
Yeah. So he was into the occult, and she was majoring in medieval metaphysics, because of course that's a thing, and and they met at a college party, which I have to say, oh, where was the quote? It's Edward met Asenath at a gathering of intelligentsia held in one of the students' rooms. And just from that description alone, I'm just picturing like about 6 guys packed into a crowded dorm room, like passing around cans of PBR and being like, oh yeah, well, we're the cool guys. Like the other people wanted to get in, but they couldn't because we're so exclusive. Not because there's no more. This room is packed to the gills. It's because we're so exclusive.
Yeah.
Oh boy. But yeah. There. So yeah. Shoot, I was going somewhere with that and I forgot.
Well, what happens with the story? What happened?
Yeah, so this story is kind of it's kind of similar to the case the statement of Randolph Carter, in that it's the format of it is that this is a statement given to the police from one of the main characters that is saying like, all right, look, you're gonna think I'm crazy, but this is what actually happened. Because
he actually did something. I mean, it's not
yes.
like a statement of Randolph Carter where he just sort of ran away.
Yeah, no. So this
puts into somebody.
Yeah, so I mean, the first sentence of the story is, "It is true that I have sent 6 bullets through the head of my best friend, and yet I hope to show by the statement that I am not his murderer." Like,
yeah, try that. That's gonna go far. Yeah, that good job, buddy.
Yeah, and I really putting in a little plug for the Lovecraft Historical Society. Their Dark Adventure Radio Theater of The Thing on the Doorstep is really great because it sort of they lean into this police procedural almost, where they have like a sort of unnamed side character who's Dan's interrogator, essentially, saying like, "Look, Mr. Upton, and I know that you say, I know that you say this, but like, look, all the evidence is backing up against you. Like, what do you have to say for yourself, Mister? Kind of a thing." And so he's telling the story, and it's like most of Lovecraft stories, it's told from the first person point of view. So they really lean into that, and I think it's great. So like, yay, guys!
Where can you get it?
Yeah, so they're available. I'll put the link into either the description box or I can try to put it in the chat. Excuse me. Dark Adventure Radio Theater. Here we go. They have it available on their website. They're absolutely fantastic. And if you buy the CD version of the story, then they send you props, and they're
that's awesome. I love
fantastic.
props.
Yes.
I love props.
And I not to brag, but I pre-ordered it, and so I got a bonus prop. There it is. There's a link for it. I got a bonus prop that is Asenath Waite's library card for Miskatonic University, and it's pretty cool. It's really great, I have to say. But anywho, I may go over and grab them when we get through the story if there's still a bit of time. But yeah, so into the story. This is so the three main characters are Dan Upton, who's the one telling the story. There's Edward Derby, his childhood friend.
Poor Edward. And Dan is much older. Well, he's
he is older.
His age.
Yeah. Ed is 8 years younger.
Mm-hmm.
And Ed is the Lovecraft stand-in in this. A pretty blatant Lovecraft stand-in. He has the same childhood that Lovecraft had. He had a private education, was an only child, had an organic weakness.
He had some kind of nervous condition.
Yep. Doting parents that kept the child close to them, was not allowed outside without someone else, seldom had a chance to play with other children. This is Lovecraft. And the other character is Asenath Waite, who ends up being Ed's wife, and who is I have to say is pretty strongly based on Lovecraft's wife, Sonia Green. And there's a couple of different ways that is makes that have the similarities. But as we go through the story, I'll get into them. And so those are our three main characters. There are a couple of side characters. Dan has a wife and son. And there's mentions of a couple others, but that's really this is our cast of characters here.
Yeah, the wife and son really don't play much of a part in it. Throwaway sentences, I think.
Yeah, they have a bit more of a part in the Dark Adventure Radio Theater, which is why I mentioned them. They're more like sort of reinforcing what's actually going on. But so as we say, Ed is essentially a child scholar. He's doesn't have a whole lot of other friends his age, so he sort of latches on to Dan, and they become friends. They're both from Arkham, which is where the story is mainly set. And there are a couple references to other mythos stories in this. Ed is a correspondent of Justin Jeffrey, who wrote People of the Monolith. This is a reference to Robert E. Howard's story, The Black Stone, which, if you haven't read it, it's great.
I've never read it.
Yeah, no, it's really, really interesting.
Okay.
And he, the quote here is, he was a close correspondent of the notorious Baudelaire poet Justin Jeffrey, who wrote The People of the Monolith, and died screaming in a madhouse in 1926 after a visit to a sinister, ill-regarded village in Hungary. So this is, it basically, Justin Jeffrey hears these old folk stories about this weird black stone up on a hill that the locals don't go near. And he's like, well, these locals are full of it. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna sleep by the thing, and then he goes nuts.
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
Good going, buddy.
Yeah, nice job. Good. Well planned.
Yeah.
Well planned.
Yeah. God. Yeah. That story also introduced the Oh boy, here we go. The Unausprechlichen Kulten by Friedrich von Junst, which
German book.
is, yes, the nameless cults, which is, it will be used by Lovecraft in other future stories, but that's where that particular spooky book comes from.
Ah, cool. Okay.
Yeah, and so yeah, also goes into when he's talking about Ed being more of a childhood scholar. He spends a lot of time in the Miskatonic Library, where he reads the Book of Eibon, the Unausprechlichen Kulten, and of course the Necronomicon, though he doesn't tell his parents that he's read them.
Right, he keeps it a secret. That's probably the best.
Yeah, probably. Ed's mother died.
That during breakfast or something. Hey, Mom, Dad, by the way, I read this book of unknowing horror.
Yeah. Where are you going? Out. Where's out? Oh, I'm going to the library to read nameless books. Okay, cool. Have fun, honey. Be back by dinner.
I know. I mean, it's not like, in the grand scheme of things, he's not drinking or gambling or.
Yeah, I mean, well, he is.
Cat house. I mean, he's just reading about nameless horrors.
But he is hanging out with the Bohemian college kids, though. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
When he's 38, I might add, when he meets Asenath, he's 38 and she's 23. So
that's a huge difference. But
yeah,
again, it's not Asenath. She's the old man.
Yeah, no. So I mean, but then it's
behave more maturely.
Yeah, but then again, it's an age gap in the complete opposite direction.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, he was the younger one.
Yeah, and that's actually a bit of a that Asenath is younger than Ed is a flip of Lovecraft's own marriage. Sonia was a couple of years older than Howard was when they got married, which he particularly liked. He thought that being the Poe fanboy as ever, he's Sarah Whitman was a couple years older than Poe, so he's like, oh yeah, it's just like Poe. And she was like, yeah, okay, honey, okay, cool, that's fine. Yeah. But yes, so and also keeping on with the parallels, Ed's mother dies when he's 34, and that's when he started getting in with the college kids and with all of that, and he sort of it says afterward he seemed to feel a sort of grotesque exhilaration. So that's pretty similar to when Lovecraft's mother died. After she died, then he pretty soon after, actually, he met and started dating and got married to Sonia. Yeah, so there's, yeah. Now, as soon as we get introduced to Asenath, there starts being lots of references to Lovecraft's other story, The Shadow over Innsmouth, which is, again, very good story. If you haven't read it, please do.
It's one of my favorite stories.
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, and he talks about Asenath having she was dark, smallish, and very good looking, except for over protuberant eyes. So yep, she's got the Innsmouth look.
That's fine. That's no problem.
Oh yeah,
that's a thyroid issue.
Yeah, she's yeah. And she there's something in her expression that alienates extremely sensitive people. So, I mean, I've known a couple of people like that.
There you go.
So, hey, and this is starting out fairly slowly. Like, if you haven't read The Shadow over Innsmouth and you don't know about the Innsmouth look, this could just be like, yeah, well, she's not conventionally attractive. Like, it's okay, but it's starting out fairly mundane. So,
But
yeah.
if you read The Shadow over Innsmouth, you
Oh,
realize
yeah.
she's a fish.
Yeah, if you've read that, then you're like, oh,
Yep.
oh, that's the one you're going for. Okay, okay, I see what you're doing, Ed. Okay, cool. All right, fine. Uh, yeah, and she is from Innsmouth. She's one of the Innsmouth Waits. She oh, I lost my place in my notes. Um, oh yeah. So Lovecraft talks a little bit about Ephraim's sort of power set of what he can do with his magic. And he says that legend averred that he, Ephraim, could raise or quell storms at sea according to his whim. He came to Arkham several times to consult forbidden tomes at the college library, and
How forbidden were they then, really?
Well, I mean, probably they were just like from the restricted section, but like, I really want like some kind of story or like a short film or something that's set during that time because I need like a crossover thing where there's Ephraim Waite and the old Waitley going to Miskatonic, and they're both going for the same book, and they're like they're both reaching for it, and they're like
yeah, that's funny. That would be funny.
Yeah, and then you could also have Armitage in there being a buzzkill.
Yeah,
that'd be great. I don't know. But I digress. Yeah, so Asenath has some of the same. She is able to do most of the same things. She can.
Strangely enough, she's able to do the same things her father can.
Yeah, she can raise thunderstorms. Although they chalk it up to really good prediction instead of like actual magical powers. Animals don't like her. She can like move her hand, dogs howl, which would be pretty cool, I gotta say. And she. Yes, there were times when she displayed snatches of knowledge and language very singular and very shocking for a young girl, when she would frighten her schoolmates with leers and winks of an inexplicable kind, and would seem to extract an obscene and zestful irony from her present situation. So, I mean, yeah, he's laying it on pretty thick here.
Yeah, and what were we talking about before? It just shows you that Howard cannot write women.
No.
It's an old man.
Yeah, and I personally really like Asenath as a character. I think that it's kind of, or I should say Ephraim, I suppose. Although Asenath is referred to as she in the story, so I'm going to keep doing that. But
well, the body's a she.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just like the logistics of it, kind of. I just find that really fascinating. Like, okay, yeah, you're gonna have a body snatcher. All right, but how are we gonna pull this off? I think that's really cool. And I think that Lovecraft does a pretty good job in that, in making a convincing body snatcher.
Yeah, I mean, he does it well. I mean, even when the man jumps into poor Edward, he does it well.
And I mean, does Lovecraft lay it on really thick? Yes. Does he kind of give away the ending of the story as he goes along? Like, yes. Yeah, That's valid. That's a fairly good criticism of the story. But I mean, like the man tells you what's going to happen at the end at the very as the first sentence of the story. So like,
yeah, go figure. No, it's constructed well. I mean,
yeah,
he's basically trying to get his alibi.
yeah,
That's what he's doing.
yeah. And I mean, just speaking personally, but when I talk, I jump back and forth between like, oh yeah, well, you know, like I'll be telling a story and then I'll jump ahead and be like, oh yeah, well that was that thing, and then I go back and like just tell more, and then I jump to the end again, and like that's just how I talk. So like I that didn't like raise any red flags for me, but I can definitely see where people are coming from with that as a criticism. Yeah. So he and then of course Lovecraft says that. Asenath's crowning rage, however, was that she was not a man, since she believed a male brain had certain unique and far-reaching cosmic powers. Buddy!
You know, I always wonder about that. Do you think he was frustrated because he couldn't do what he was able to do as himself in her body?
Well, I mean, this particular thing, I think, could be that is very much of the time period. That was
Okay.
a common thought at the time.
Why bother jumping into Edward? He has a body, and in fact, she'll live much longer because she's half deep one.
Yeah,
I mean,
and that's
about it, he hit the jackpot right at the beginning.
I know, right? Like you think.
Yeah, he really
but
did. Why jump into poor Edward?
Well, later on in the story, after he's jumped into Edward and all of that, he mentions something about needing a body that's human. So maybe it's throwing off his. Yeah, I mean it's just like a throwaway line, and kind of toward the end when Ed is when they're on their way back from Chesncook. Yeah, I mean there's a lot of like crazy ranting at that particular part of the story. So like, yeah, you know it's.
Okay, so that deep one blood is preventing him from doing more of his magic or something.
Possibly. I mean, the way I kind of interpreted it as being kind of similar to another really good book series about a particular character called Johannes Cabal. There's a series of it, but the book I'm talking about is Johannes Cabal the Necromancer, the first book in the series. Where it's the guy is he's kind of riffing on Herbert West a little. The author's name is Jonathan L. Howard. It's a great book. Oh shoot, we lost your camera for a sec. Oh, wait, there you go.
I am. My battery's dying.
Oh no.
That's right. We have to wrap the story up. Stella.
Oh no. All right.
It's all right. This is our first attempt. That's okay.
Yeah. But the just to wrap up the tangent, in the Johannes Cabal story, it's Johannes has sold his soul for the secret of necromancy, and he has the knowledge, but him not having a soul is screwing with his experiments. He can't do it properly. So the whole book is him trying to get back his soul, but not lose any of the knowledge. And I'm not going to spoil it, but it's a really great book. And if you haven't read it, then it's. Yeah,
that's cool. I haven't read it, so that'll be on my list. Very cool.
They're great. Yeah, but anyway, Thing on the Doorstep. So yes. So yeah.
He slowly takes over Edward.
Yeah, basically. Essentially, he there's a lot of Lovecraft goes into fairly extensive detail on whether on how Ed talks so much about Asenath. That's all he can talk about. He wants to marry Asenath and move out to the suburbs, and the suburbs.
Yeah, no, away from his palatial home.
Yeah, and I mean, and they do end up getting married and they move in together, but they're still in town. They're in a house that's called the Crown and Shield Place.
They do go to get do go to Innsmouth to get servants and stuff.
Yes, and that is their honeymoon. So make of that what you will.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when
And you figure, you're never told, but you figure the servants are either Deep One hybrids,
yeah,
or collaborators somehow.
Yeah, they have a perpetual odor of fish, so they're most likely.
Yeah, they're hybrids.
Yeah, they're hybrids. And they've been Ephraim's old servants. So they're going on and they're going on, and Ed is whenever Ed comes to visit Dan, he knocks. He has a particular knock. It's a 3 and 2, which I mentioned because it is a plot point later in the story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so he at first when he comes over to visit, he talks like he's real excited about how he's learning more about esoteric lore and things like that. Now Asenath is really like, she knows a lot about this stuff. Like, wow,
Yeah.
And then
it's pretty amazing. She's really well read for her age.
Yeah, and she's like, she knows a whole lot. And then he starts. You can kind of tell that he's starting to get in a little over his head, and so he doesn't talk as much about it after times. Occasionally they go on long trips, presumably to Europe, but they come back with like weird things and various occult things. And now and again, there's a quote here, now and again it seemed, Edward was observed to wear an expression and do things wholly incompatible with his usual flabby nature. So first, flabby nature, same, relatable, but also it, like, I mean, maybe it's just the Providence Hills, but I get winded. So, yeah. But yeah, so this is starting to set up the sort of final revelation that, like, oh shoot, it's not actually Ed doing these things. What? It looks like him, but it's not him.
If we can jump toward the end, he does realize his body's being taken over, and he kills Asenath. He
does
get rid of her.
Yeah, he crushes her skull with a candlestick.
Yeah, and he thinks, I'm free. I've done it. And well...
Yeah, well, 3.5 months later, he has a bit of a nervous breakdown. He has, and Dan, he had been staying with Dan because he didn't want to go back and live in the Crown and Chill place, and completely understandably. But he's living with Dan, and he has this breakdown, and Dan gets him set up in the Arkham Sanitarium, which it's the right move. That's the right move at this point. And there's no change, and then after a while, he because I mean the guy is talking crazy, and then he
can feel the old man coming back and creeping into his mind. That's the crazy talk. He's like, oh, I'm losing myself. I can feel him coming back.
Yeah, and he and then all of a sudden, Dan gets a call from the asylum, like, oh wow, he's made a lot of progress, and he's all better now. Like he seems like he's sane. Yeah, and Dan gets real excited. Bless him, he gets so excited. He's like, "Oh wow, he's all better now. I'm gonna go down and visit." And he goes down and he realizes that's not it.
That's right. Well, before he goes down, if we'll circle back, and he does get those knocks at the door.
Yeah, no, it's right after. It's the day after. Yeah, so he's gotten back from the asylum, and while Ed seems to be on the mend, Dan is like 2 steps away from having a nervous breakdown, because he knows that is
putting the pieces together.
Yeah, and he Then the day after, he gets another call from the asylum saying, "Oh yeah, well, he's making a lot of progress. He'll probably be released by the end of the week." And that night, he gets a weird telephone call at about midnight, and he answers the phone. And he doesn't really hear anything on the other end. It's kind of like there's this sort of bubbling noise, and I have to say, the only instance of blub blub being used in a threatening manner in any story I've ever read.
There you go.
But I mean, hey, there you go. And he can't hear anything, so he says, "Well, I can't hear you. You're gonna have to hang up and try information." So he hangs up, and about 2 hours later, there's the 3 and 2 knock, and also ringing the doorbell, and he's like, "Well, it's 2 a.m. Like, what's going on?" But also, that's Ed's knock. So what's going on here? And so he opens the door, and there's something on the doorstep, and it's the proverbial thing on the doorstep. Hey.
Yep, there we go.
Roll credits. We find out later it is a corpse in a trench coat and a hat pulled low. So nice going, buddy. Yep. But I mean, it's a fairly good disguise. It smells to high heaven, but he can't really see anything. The coat goes straight to the ground. The sleeves are rolled up, but you can't see any hands. So it's a pretty good disguise, all things considered. But he's holding a sheet of paper impaled on a pencil, and he's kind of take it, kind of at Dan. So he does. Right. And Dan, I have to say, Dan invites it in. Like an idiot. He invites it in. And he starts reading the paper, and he passes out.
Yep, that's right. It's too much for him.
It isn't a Lovecraft story if he doesn't pass out.
That's right.
And he, when he wakes up, he finishes reading the story, and then he goes and he shoots Ed in the sanitarium. Mm-hmm. But the piece of paper, excuse me, the piece of paper is a letter from Ed, the real Ed, basically saying, "Dan, go to the sanitarium and kill it. It's not Edward Derby in there. She got me. She's been dead 3.5 months, and I've been stuck in her body. And then I tried calling you, but the vocal cords are too far gone. But I can still kind of write. So I came over. Here's this."
And then he turns into a puddle.
Yeah, I mean, it's
a puddle on the doorstep.
Yeah,
or he leaves a puddle.
Yeah, so no, he turns into a puddle because the decomposition process is that far. He's just he was barely holding on, as is, and he so yeah, he crawled out of the shallow grave in the cellar of the ground shield place, and he got to the he came over to Dan's place, and then when Dan wakes up, sorry folks, I'm getting over a cold, but yeah, the when he wakes up, his butler has sees this mess of rotting nonsense on the floor, and he calls the police. He's the smart one, and he takes him up to bed and sort of is like, "All right, well, here's this. Just rest, buddy. You need it." And then when the police find that this is, they do some testing on what is what is this mess that was in his house? Yeah, and there's a crushed-in skull. Some of dental work positively identified the skull as Asenath's. So that's kind of oh, it's all real.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the props that that comes with the Dark Adventure Radio Theater. There's an evidence card that's a picture of Asenath's skull, and it's creepy, man. It's real creepy. They do a great job with it. Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, well, you also
and that is the story.
It sure is. Yeah. Yeah.
So I enjoyed it. I really did. I thought
yeah, me too. Yeah, I think it's really great, and I like the how Lovecraft kind of goes into a bit of detail about when Dan and Ed are coming back from Chesuncook, which is actually a real town, I might add, and it's right up at the tippy top of Maine. Dan talks about driving all day, and it is about a 9-hour drive from Arkham's real-life counterpart, Salem, which is kind of northeastern Massachusetts. So yeah, 9 hours. That's
wow.
I've done a 9-hour drive, and I would not recommend it to anybody unless you absolutely have to.
Wow. All right. So what are we going to do next week? This was our first one.
Yes.
So next week, is it next week?
We could do it next week. If everything comes in time, I need to check my PO box tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, well, maybe a week or two. Give us time.
Yeah.
It'll happen when it happens.
Yeah.
Next time we'll have sort of a more contemporary story.
So
compare and contrast.
Yeah. So this story had somewhat of a female character in it, so to speak. And next time we are going to be going over at least one of the stories in She Walks in Shadows, which is a Lovecraftian anthology of stories featuring female characters written by ladies, and I think it's going to be real cool. I've heard lots of good things about it. I personally haven't read it yet, but yeah, so.
Yeah, that's the plan. Mm-hmm. Cool. All right, so until then, I'm Jim Pyre.
I'm Stella Brewster.
We will see you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.